Okay, apparently we are right. We are live and rolling from the beautiful outskirts of Conway, Arkansas. And I'm going to cut over to PowerPoint. Can everyone see this adequately?
Yes.
Okay, so there. We're talking about nematodes, a little bit of a review. There's lots of them. They're freaking everywhere. There's lots of important parasites. Um, we were talking about the two basic classes, chromodorids and anopliids, and the anoplia includes lots that aren't parasites, but most of the parasitic species are in the class Dorylamida, which includes trichinella or trichinellids, which we talked about last time. And today I'll finish with the other three, and then we'll move on and start looking at chromodorid nematodes. Okay, everything going smoothly? Mostly?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, I think this next slide is kind of a gross one. That is what's left of a kidney surgically removed from the body of a German shepherd who'd been parasitized by a Dioctophyma renale, which is called, for reasons that I trust are obvious, the giant kidney nematode. The normal host is mink. Humans can occasionally get parasitized, although I don't think it's very common. But dogs can also get this. You pre-vet students might conceivably see this at some time in the future. Although my understanding it's not especially common. So I'm going to take this away. And the life cycle involves a paratenic host. Eggs pass out in urine from the adults living in the kidneys. From there, they wash into fresh water, they hatch, and the larvae parasitize aquatic oligochaetes. Oligochaetes, again, are segmented worms. Earthworms are oligochaetes, but there's lots of oligochaete species that are very small, maybe not even a millimeter wide, thread-like, living in many bodies of fresh water. I don't know if you guys have ever kept aquarium fish, but you can buy dried worms of a genus Tubifex to feed your tropical fish. That's an example of one of these aquatic oligochaetes that can get parasitized by early instars of Dioctophyma. Mink don't go out of their way to eat these, but if they're drinking water that just happens to have some in them, or maybe just eating messily, the mink can get infected directly by eating an infected worm. But much more likely predators of aquatic worms like this are fish. And so if you've got a fish that eats an infected worm, the larva will form a resting cyst inside the fish. Analogous to, although not the same kind of thing as, the metacercaria in the fish that we went looking for in lab, looking for black grub and white grub and all of that. So if a mink eats the fish, the mink can get infected. If you've got a dog scavenging on fish, dead fish on the shore, or discarded catch or something like that, the dog can get it. Humans conceivably get it, although as long as you properly cook your bluegill, you should be okay. Okay, with me so far?
Yes.
Okay, right. This is another one that's been known to infect humans. This is called Eustrangylides. Natural host is aquatic birds. They'll infect the crop. Eggs pass through the gut, pass out in feces. The larvae infect oligochaete worms again. These small aquatic segmented worms. They look a little like earthworms. And then they'll get eaten by fish and grow pretty large inside the fish and then pass into the definitive host. And there have been cases of humans getting infected with this. There you've got an infected minnow right there. You can see that bright red eustrongylid. I was able to track down actually 4 clinical cases of human infection by eustrongylides. 3 out of the 4 were fishermen who swallowed live bait minnows. I am guessing here that alcohol was involved in this particular mode of infection. So I'm going to recommend that if you go fishing, you not swallow your live bait. I probably don't have to tell too many people that, but just in case, I want to be conscientious about the whole thing. Don't eat your bait minnows. They don't actually live in the gut. They'll burrow into the wall of it. And they'll leave these kind of blisters on the inside of your stomach or intestine. This means that swallowing antiparasitic drugs doesn't work all that well. And there have been cases where surgery was required to get rid of eustrongylides. So this is one that can infect people. But as long as you're not swallowing live minnows, you probably don't have to worry about this. I hope that alleviates everyone's concern. Right, continuing on. Myrmithids don't parasitize humans at all. They're parasites primarily of arthropods, and they will mature inside the body and then come bursting out. That brownish thing that you see over at the center left is what used to be a fire ant. And several adult myrmithids have come bursting out of its abdomen with lethal consequences for the fire ant. I don't have any footage of it, but I actually saw one of these things coming out of, I think it was a caterpillar in Dr. Desord's lab. He occasionally spots these in the live insects that he goes out and collects. As adults, the gut is disconnected. These guys have a gut, but they don't have an esophagus. They don't have an anus. The gut is just a long sac. Food from the preparasitic stage is stored in the intestine. When they're parasites, they'll also absorb some nutrients through the cuticle. And then when the adults come bursting out, they mate, but they don't feed, and they eventually die. This is a myrmithid that is coming bursting out of a mosquito larva, which is why, as horrifying and alien-like as myrmithids seem, they are, in fact, your friends. There's one species that infects 22 species of mosquito in the wild, and it's actually been tried as a means of mosquito control. There on the left, you can see Skeeter Doom over there. I'm not sure how widely available this is, but this has at least been successful in some trials. The pre-parasitic nematodes penetrate the larvae. They develop into parasitic juveniles. The post-parasitic juveniles burst out of the host one more time. They molt one more time, and then they mate, and they may live outside the host from anywhere from a week to a year, depending on the species and the host. So critters like this are potentially useful as a means of biological control.
Could there be like other ecological consequences of, do they parasitize? Like, I know that parasites are pretty host specific, but what if they take out another population of bugs that are important in the water?
A good question, and certainly worth asking, and I don't know that I have an answer. As far as I know, this particular species goes after mosquitoes, but doesn't go after anything else.
Okay.
I could be wrong about that, and certainly that's something that ought to be looked into. How's that for a complete non-answer?
Pretty good.
Okay, glad I could help out. Okay, notice the in the lower right, there's a little microscope with a speech bubble saying doom. And then the last group, Mespiciids, also lose their connection between the gut and the outside. The head's up there at the top and the butt end is at the bottom, and you can see there's no continuous tube connecting them. Nobody seems to know a lot about Mespiciids. This one is a parasite of Japanese bats. And I don't think they've been very well studied. If anybody wants to go out and become the world expert on Mespiciids, It's probably a pretty wide open field.
I don't know if it's just my bad internet, but the slides are lagging way behind your voice, so I'll hear you change the slide, but it doesn't update for a good second.
Okay.
It might
All
just
right.
be,
I'll try to pause for a second before and then after changing slides. Okay.
okay.
All right. I should have a little metal xylophone to go ding whenever I change the slide. Sorry, that was the way film strips used to work back in the 70s. None of you remember. Damn millennials. Right. Ding. Okay, chromodoriids include lots of non-parasitic species as well. The order within them, Rhabditida, includes a lot of free-living ones. C. elegans is one. We talked about that earlier, that C. elegans is a free-living nematode. They tend to like habitats like compost heaps, and they've been very extensively studied for their developmental biology. But there's also parasitic nematodes in 3 suborders, Tylenchina, Rhabditina, and Spirurina. So let's go ahead and look at those. I think we've got the Tylenchids coming up first. Ding! There's a lot of Tylenchids that are free living. When we do invert, there's a lab, and it's one that we'll probably do in summer because it's pretty easy to do without too much special equipment, where we extract soil nematodes and from a soil sample, and we can find, easily 4 or 5 different species without even trying too hard. And I believe some of those are Tylenchids. They'll inhabit decaying matter. They can easily be swallowed by scavenging animals. And probably from ancestors like that, we have descendants that are both facultative parasites, meaning, if you recall, that they can live as parasites, but they don't have to, and also some obligate parasites. Ding! And this is one of my personal favorites of all of the nematodes, Heterorhabditis. It is a parasitic farming nematode, and it carries a colony of a bioluminescent bacterium called Photorhabdus. Down in the picture below, you can see that these actually do generate light. They glow, which makes me think we should call this the vanilla ice nematode because, turn out the lights and it'll glow. That was a joke.
That was a bad joke.
Thank you. Thank you. Ding! And this is really weird because Heterorhabditis spends much of its time living in soil, but it will penetrate insect larvae. In fact, I might actually try to trap some. I've tried this before and it didn't work very well, but you can trap them just by taking some insect larvae. Mealworms might work. So might waxworms, which are also sold in pet stores. And you just kind of place them on top of a soil sample. And if Heterorhabditis is there, they'll literally stand on their tails and stick right up and then, crawl right onto the insect when it comes by. And when Heterorhabditis penetrates an insect larva, it barfs out its bioluminescent bacteria. These multiply very rapidly inside the insect and they kill it within 48 hours. The cool thing is that the insect then promptly starts glowing. So you get glow-in-the-dark dead insect larvae if they've been parasitized with Heterorhabditis. The Heterorhabditis then feeds on the Photorhabdus. It's like the Heterorhabditis is farming these bacteria. They feed on the Photorhabdus. They'll save a few for later. They will then reproduce and come bursting out of the larva. And down below, you can see a larva with thousands of juvenile Heterorhabditis nematodes bursting out of it. I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. And like I said, when we tried it a couple of years ago, we didn't find any of these in the nature reserve, but I might give it another shot. If for no other reason than at least it's a lab we can do virtually. I can just put some insect larvae on soil samples and see if any of them glow. Because, why not? Ding! And then another trilenchid that does infect a wide range of animals, including humans, is genus Strongyloides. The common name for these guys is threadworm. Human infection isn't necessarily serious, but it can be very severe in immunocompromised patients. When y'all probably don't remember this, I'm old enough to remember the early 80s when HIV was a death sentence, leading to full-blown AIDS. And what kills AIDS patients is not so much the virus itself, it's a whole constellation of diseases that they succumb to that in people with healthy immune systems are very rare. So there's one particular kind of cancer, one type of pneumonia caused by yeast, single-celled fungi, and another one of the things that wasn't too uncommon was Strongyloides nematode infections. So these can be bad if your immune system is not in perfect working order. Ding! The adults are gut parasites. They shed eggs. These are the eggs. You can't really see the shells very clearly, but each one of those things that looks like a little Cheerio is a coiled up larval nematode inside a transparent eggshell. Unlike other parasites we've talked about, unlike whipworms, unlike Trichura, and unlike some others that we'll see later, like hookworms, these hatch while they're still in the intestine. In parasites that are transmitted by the fecal-oral route, very often the eggs hatch outside the host body, but this is an exception. And because these eggs hatch while they're still in the intestine, the larvae can parasitize the same host. This is one of the few parasites that can keep on parasitizing the same individual over the course of many generations. And this is the one that I mentioned that was found in World War II veterans of the Pacific War, 50 and 60 years after they had been in the tropical Pacific where they contracted this. So this is one that not individual worms, but populations can last within one host for many years, which is kind of an unusual thing for parasites to do.
So the larvae can do a reinfective, like they can keep it. Is it like a choice where they can go out of the body and infect something else?
I'm not sure how much choice is involved. It may just be.
Well,
I'm not sure if the larvae can. I'm not sure if the larvae are adapted to have any choice in the matter, or if it's just a matter of timing.
But some of them can leave the body, though, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they do. Some of them do leave. So let's see. Yes, the larvae are excreted in stool. Some of these can develop directly into an infective form, but others will develop for one phase outside of the body. I don't think you can see my mouse pointer, but I'm pointing at stage 2, where some of these early larvae, these rhabditiform larvae, develop into filariform larvae, and some of them. Okay, that blue arrow at number 10 shows that some of these larvae can reinfect the intestine directly. So those blue arrows are the part of the life cycle that never leaves the original host. Some of these larvae can develop into an infective form that penetrates the skin, called a filariform larva. We'll see this again when we talk about hookworm, which also has larvae that infect by skin penetration. And then some of the larvae that are infected can develop into a free living stage that will just hang out in the soil, develop into male and female, go through a sexual generation, produce eggs, which hatch into new larvae, which come around and penetrate the skin. So it looks like there are three different ways that those larvae can develop. They can auto-infect, which is the life cycle shown in blue. They can directly develop into filariform larvae, which parasitize a new host by penetrating the skin, or they can develop into adult worms, which will sexually reproduce outside the body. Be a very interesting question as to what triggers either one, any of those three possible paths. But clearly, this is a very versatile parasite that can continue its life cycle for a time outside a host if it doesn't find a host. Okay, and again, at that number 1 in yellow, I don't know why a given larva would choose or have chosen for it one or the other paths. That's a neat problem. Maybe I should make you answer that for the final. Maybe not. Okay. Ding. There's others of these that you vet people are likelier to see because they cause health problems in horses. This is Strongyloides westeri, which has developed a new and rather sinister mode of transmission. It can actually travel in the bloodstream and can travel to a mare's mammary glands and be transmitted in milk. So foals can get this. The adults live in the foal gut. Eggs pass out in feces. The eggs hatch into larvae. The larvae can survive for some time. They'll molt and develop into a filaria stage. And I didn't define that word earlier with the human Strongyloides, but filaria refers to a larval stage that's very thin and travels through the bloodstream. Heartworm, for example, has a filarial stage. We'll actually look at some heartworm slides coming up. So does Wucheria, I think, which causes blockage of the lymphatic ducts, causes the condition called elephantiasis, which we've got coming up in a bit. Adult horses may develop immunity, but again, it can be transmitted from mare to foal, or I guess mare to filly, through the mammary glands, through the milk, which is a little bit sinister, I guess. Ding! Okay, so there you've got the life cycle laid out. The filariform larvae will penetrate whenever the horse is lying on the ground. For that matter, the human species can infect humans that way as well. In areas where this is known to be a problem, you shouldn't contact bare skin on the ground if at all possible. They develop to adults in the foals. Adults live in the small intestine and eggs pass out. Eggs that are passed out of the foal's feces can hatch and either develop directly into infective filariforms or go through a free living stage of males and females. This is actually very much like what you get in the human species as well. You've got that interesting little branch point right there. And I assume that populations of this need to go through this free living cycle because the adults, when they're parasitic, are just parthenogenetic females. So they may need to alternate generations periodically to maintain genetic diversity. Right, with me there. Ding, I say ding. Okay, that actually, this is funny. This seems to go a little faster when I'm doing it this way than when I'm in the classroom because it's harder for me to catch cues. It's harder for me to interact with you guys and make eye contact and all that. But that's what I've got to cover today.
Well, also now I have to hit a button to ask a question. That's just a lot of effort most of the time. So 85% of my questions are filtered now.
Oh, they're filtered?
Yeah, I have a billion more questions, but I just hold tight because I don't want to hit the mute button.
Okay. I tell you what, I will stop recording, and then I will cut over to. Well, I'll tell you what, I won't stop recording because these might benefit people, but I'll cut over to chat. If anybody's got questions that you want to type, go ahead and do that, or you can do it orally. Although Willow, you're breaking up just a little bit. I mean, I could still understand you, but yeah, the sound is not great.
Rude.
All right. Any questions? Any comments? Okay. Is that the one that infects foals in Arkansas? Let me go look that up. I'm not sure how common that is in Arkansas, but it wouldn't surprise me. Vet people, do you, Nick, do you have any data on that? You know more about Arkansas vet parasites than I do because I work on rocks.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Horses are not my thing.
Okay. All right. I'll try to remember to see if I can't look that up. Okay. Anybody else? Right. Okay. By the power vested in me, I'm going to stop recording right here and we'll sign off. I think I'm going to stop recording here.